What's up, guys? This is Crazy, and today I am here to talk about some interesting Thomas customs I did for fun. Now, way back during August, I was thinking about some crazy contest ideas that I think would be fun, and one of them was to make Thomas models out of American locomotives. Originally, I didn't plan to go beyond a little joking stage with this, but I actually if you guys can't tell by the thumbnail and the footage, I went a bit far. Anyway, back during December, I decided, why shouldn't I go through with this? The only problem is trying to find out some of the perfect models for each character. Characters like Gordon and Edward and Thomas were easy, while characters like Henry, James, and Toby have been through so many different models, and I'm only going to show off the first three I have done in this video. As a little backstory to me and Thomas models, when I was younger I grew up with Thomas the Tank Engine, thus I had a ton of the Trackmaster toys growing up. Eventually, around 12 to 13, I transitioned to HO scale, and mostly just kept the Trackmasters around for our YouTube channel. Anyway, with HO scale, my fleet kept on growing and growing. One of my earliest steam locomotives I got was a Bachmann Percy, which was overpriced. I also got a Toad, Troublesome Truck, and Diesel Works tanker to go with them. About a year later, when I went to Strasbourg, I got a Bachmann James at the gift shop. That Bachmann James eventually, not even a full year later, got an entire cosmetic rebuild, and currently is sitting on a little shelf alongside Percy and the character I got to do James's work for him while he was getting rebuilt, aka Duck. Duck is a Hornby model that I actually got somehow in the US. Yeah, I kind of want to know the backstory behind that. But yeah, anyway, Duck's actually the most powerful and most reliable since, well, he's not a Bachmann Duck, you know. Bachmann, Percy, and James are each pretty weak models, but Duck's able to pull a decent-sized American freight train. I decided to make the models out of, well, American engines, since I wanted to do something that not only standed out, but also something that would have been pretty affordable. I did try to do a classic series-like model with my Bachmann James, but that didn't turn out perfect. So I decided the American-style locomotives wouldn't be too bad. I started drawing concept art around December, made a concept model of Toby, which shall not be shown, but will be shown in a later installment. And I waited. Around February, when I was working on a Pennsylvania Railroad L1, I started work on Percy. I purchased his Rivarossi dock tank model off of eBay, and when it arrived, it was as simple as just maintaining it, lowering the footplate, and painting the whole thing a Kelly green. Along with that, I also gave it some red lining, painted up some other details here and there, and yeah, Percy's pretty basic. After a few months, I gave him a small update where I gave him the same clear coat that Thomas and Edward eventually gained. This is just temporary until I can, make water transfers with these guys. And I painted his wheels black, because I really do not like the off gray that Rivarossi uses for their wheels. Anyway, the next character I purchased was Edward. Well, not quite purchased, but the next character to arrive. I purchased Edward and Thomas at the same time, but Thomas had some shipping delays, so Edward arrived first. Now with Edward, I plan to use an ICH 440 since the Rivarossi ones and many other Civil War era designs felt way too small. Heck, felt practically narrow gauge next to the other characters, which is not what I'm looking for. I felt a later 440 design would have been perfect, since it's not too big yet not too small. The only problem with this though is, well, they're pretty dang hard to find in HO scale. Not many companies make that sort of 440. There's the Bachmann Spectrums and the Mahanos. That's roughly it. And I chose neither. Yep, I bought a Mahano Mogul, which shared a ton of parts with the 440, because the 440s are expensive at times. And I did not feel like getting a semi-expensive model just to turn it into a Thomas custom. Anyway, so when it arrived, I went through the trouble of modifying the entire chassis with a Rivarossi truck to turn it into a 440. Luckily, the middle set of driving wheels were driven. And on top of that, I also raised his headlight. He was starting to look like a 440. I was recommended to give him an undercoat of gray for my brother, and that was actually not a bad idea. Eventually, though, later on, I wound up swapping out his tender for a Russian decapod tender. Honestly, I feel it's a decent improvement. Currently, Edward's just waiting for me to give him the call load. Now, the final character is Thomas, at least for the showcase. Thomas is a Mantua Little 6 kit, which that will pop up later as a problem. Anyway, I picked this kit because it's the most affordable 060 tank engine that resembles Thomas. Since most tank engines in the US, just like the docksides, are saddle tanks. Yeah, so I didn't have many options when it came to doing Thomas, and I felt this was a pretty decent representation. Anyway, I painted him up, just like how I did with Edward, except he has an issue. Yeah, his front set of driving wheels has a stripped out gear, which means he's not the best runner. If there's no pressure on those wheels, then he just sits there making a ton of noise. I plan on swapping out the wheels for another set of driving wheels. My issue is, since this model is so old, no one else makes parts for them. And I can't find any used parts on eBay without buying a whole separate locomotive, which I don't feel like doing. I don't feel like just having a whole separate little 060 tank engine just sitting in my parts bin, just needing new wheels. Because then that's going to lead into another project, which will lead into another project. I am stuck in an infinite loop of projects. Please save me. But yeah, most likely I'll buy an 060 tender engine, which has slightly larger driving wheels. Not only working a bit better for Thomas in terms of passenger service, it also won't increase his height too much, and hopefully the gear won't be stripped on the 060 tender engine. If it is, expect me to crash out. Well, that's about it, guys. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. If you could like and subscribe, I'd appreciate that. Anyways, see y'all in the next one.